And we are all live right now. So appreciate your time, Justin and Nick. This is our first ever Marketing Monday. We're going to be coming back next Monday and the Monday after to bring some inbound marketing content, right? That's needed to unpack and to help folks go from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, wherever their companies are in the stage, and really understand some potent concepts. So today I have Justin Levy as well as Nick Bennet on. We'll do a quick round of introductions, then we'll jump right into it. But we're talking dark social, right, y'all? It's a pretty exciting time. Justin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey guys, I'm Justin Levy, and I'll actually be around for every, if not most, of these Marketing Mondays. But I'm the director of social and influencer marketing, as well as communities for Demand Base.
Yeah, and I can jump in as well. So I'm Nick Bennet. So I run evangelism and customer marketing at Alice, and also have a podcast called Rep Your Brand that is all about dark social going on in the background.
This is big right now. Everybody's saying dark social is potent. Dark social this, dark social that. People even know where dark social is now. In the beginning, it was just like, what is it? People are learning it's off attributable platforms, I guess is the quick way to do it. But I want to back up. There's so many myths and popular ideas with dark social now. I just want to put the ball in your court and say, like, debunk one of them. What myth about companies leveraging dark social do you want to challenge, Nick?
Yeah,
Or Justin?
I mean,
Justin, do you want to go first on this one?
Nick told me I had to go first, so
yeah. I want to be conscious. I didn't want to throw him off there.
I think that it's a two-parter, right? So I think one of the biggest myths that companies and or people have when they think about companies with dark social is, one, they don't think it can be beneficial for the company, right? They think that it's all, their benefits all going to be in paid ads and social and what have you, the organic side of things. But also that folks that are involved, people from their team that are involved in dark social, could potentially be wasting their time in that there's not a return on that, right? Because it's just the person, it's the personal brand that's in there. So there's not this necessarily connected view, right? So if Nick or I are in dark social, it's our names. They don't see the association of Demand Base or Alice or Jared and Rev Genius. So depend on the company you're with, they might just see it as your pastime or a waste of time.
So right, but so we'll start with that. We'll go to Nick, and then we'll expound on this a bit.
Yeah, for me, I think it's the fact that people are like, dark social is BS. It's really just word of mouth. And so word of mouth, in my mind, is direct messages, text, like things that, like, I am telling Jared, like, say I texted you, Jared, because we text quite often, and I'm just like, Jared, go check out Alice. And you're just like, all right, cool. Like, less percent, I don't work there, but like, you're going to go, if we have a good relationship, you're going to go check them out. But the piece that you're missing is all these other places that dark social is happening. So communities, like my podcast, for example, I'll give you a really good example, is my podcast that has been around for about 1.5 years now. I actually drive inbounds for Alice. Funny thing, I don't even talk about Alice in the podcast, but people just associate my name with the podcast. They click through, they see my profile. they start to talk to other people, and it just kind of becomes a kind of like a round circle. And then you got like the social platforms, and you've got third-party events and meetups. I was at Inbound last week, and I was at the Chili Piper event. Shout out Chili Piper. And I had so many people that came up to me and they were like, hey, love your content. I learned about Alice because of the content that you post on LinkedIn. In person, I get that through DMs all the time. Like, if that's not dark social, then, what is? And I battle people all the time because they're just like, dark social is just word of mouth. And I feel like it's so much more.
We throw this revenue jobs on Wednesdays, and then out of nowhere, I found out one of our hosts hired somebody there, and I'm like, but I didn't know about it. And she's like, thank you so much. I'm like, you're welcome. Like, it's so potent. Now, how can companies better leverage this? Like why? So I understand, some of the ambiguity, the difficulties in measuring. What should companies do to best harness this, Nick?
I think it's allocating resources to it. Like, you have to understand, and I think it goes back to what I'm trying to do around the whole evangelism piece. Like, I'm trying to pave the path for non-executives to be an evangelist for the company that you work for. Again, I don't talk about Alice in 98% of the content that I create. However, when 11,000 people are clicking on my LinkedIn profile and they're going and submitting an inbound demo request and they're using self-reported attribution and they say, how did you hear about us? Nick Bennet, LinkedIn. I mean, I think that's a pretty good process. Or this community, Rev Genius, whatever it is, like the self-reported attribution piece is really huge there. And I think that you need to double down on not getting 50 people within the company posting about the company, but getting 50 people within the company to create content on their own, building their brands, building their audiences. Because I think that what's going to happen is through all these other pieces, communities, content platforms, events, like, you're going to come up, the company that you work for is going to come up. And I'll give you another perfect example. I was talking to someone earlier, and I was actually doing another event, and they said, listen, I associate your name with Alice. Like, when I think Alice, I think of you. And they were like, I don't even fully need a platform like that. But if I did, I would solely go and at least take a demo because you work there. And I think it just goes into that huge piece of evangelism, content creation, all that. It plays like that flywheel effect.
Yeah, so I get that. And I think most revenue leaders get that, Nick. But it costs 6 figures to hire this person, right? I don't get that. Like this person's hitting their numbers, and this is sprinkled on the top all day long. Like, I'm here. Thank you for going above and beyond. Chief Evangelist Officer job description. Nick, how many jobs did you go through personally before you had evangelism in your title in your current job, in your current company, right? Let's go.
Yeah, it was my third one, but that's why you need to elevate and empower your employees to create the content, because you don't have to bring people in. More than likely, all of these companies, there's someone there that's creating content that could be a recognizable face. And I think it's elevating those people.
Yeah, I would add that you don't, I mean, Nick and I have been friends for a while now. So we've talked about having evangelism in his title and what have you, and that being where he wants to be, but you don't have to have that, right? Like, in having evangelists and what have you, branded evangelists, I should say, kind of in a title. We're seeing more the rage nowadays, but you don't have to be that. You just can be a person that works through your company, that is out front with your personal brand, active in these channels, be it LinkedIn, like Nick has said, and in these private communities, that is building brand attribution, your personal brand, driving traffic back to you and your company. And that's absolutely evangelism. One of the things that we do too is utilize our customers to be evangelists for us, right? Because if I go in, I can promote demand base all day long. People are going to know that that's self promotion. They probably don't really give a shit, right? They know that I'm going to go say nice things about the brand that pays me. But what we do is that within our team, we have a process. I have someone on my team who's fully dedicated to researching and looking at conversations that are happening and pulling out threads that might be about us, questions about us, or about things that we care about, right? Product features and things of that nature. And we provide those to our customer marketing team. And our customers that are already active in these channels, we're not just asking people to join, it's people that are already active. They will go into those channels and promote on our behalf. And it's not saying that we promote, that we're not paying them or something, but they'll go and say, we tried this platform, that platform, this one. And based on everything, demand base might not have everything we wanted, but they certainly are helping us with, A, B, and C. So we're using customers to drive those conversations. And just last week or the week before, that ended up becoming a meeting for one of our reps who sent me a message afterwards saying, yep, the second that these couple of customers weighed in, we ended up booking a meeting immediately. So you kind of can't, you have the self-attribution, the self-reported attribution that Nick talked about, but you also have that customers that are commenting on your behalf and things of that nature are turning into meetings for your company.
I couldn't agree more. I had somebody reaches out to me every other month or so in the Rev Genius community, and he's like, I just bought another product that was recommended here. He's like, I'm up to 3 or 4. I'm like, is that a bad thing? He's like, no, thank you. I'm like discovering all of this. Like, I'm like, people selling you and you feel weird. No. I'm just hearing about so much stuff. So I certainly get it. And let's talk about the evolution of social to where the point we're at, right? Organic social starting point, and then paid social layered after that, and then influencer social. Is this the evolution past that?
So I've been in it for 15 years, right? It's what my career has been. I've led global social media for multi-billion-dollar brands for my career, and I firmly that has been my career arc, right? Social, and then I had influencer tacked onto it, and now I have dark social tacked onto it. And I was having this conversation with a really close friend of mine last week who just actually released a white paper on dark social in private communities. And we both believe firmly that dark social is what social media was back 12 to 15 years ago. When I was starting out in socials, before Twitter had a mobile app, and you had to text your replies to be on, to show up. And it was right when YouTube was coming on board, and Facebook was still only available in the Northeast because of Zuckerberg and all of that. And I foresee, and I think that we're still in those early days of dark social, because people are still trying to figure it out. The reporting isn't really that mature for it yet, right? You do have self-reported attribution. You can, if you really want to get into it, track links and stuff like that, but it's not mature. So I do think this is something that we will continue to see mature over the coming years. And the people and the companies that are getting out in front of it right now will be the companies that we'll look back on in 5 years. that did get out in front of it and are extremely successful at it.
What are you seeing, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, so I definitely agree. And I was actually, I'm funny enough, I'm actually doing a webinar with Devin Reed and Dal Prail around influencer marketing this week. And so it's interesting because I feel like the dark social aspect. So when I think of like influencer marketing and using that as a channel, dark social plays into it because people are going to listen to, Jared, what you have to say around certain things, or what Chris Walker has to say, or Devin Reed, or Scott Leese, or all these people. Like, they're going to listen when they're talking about different things. And if they're recommending specific products or specific things around different categories, like it plays into dark social. Now, is it something where, they're using the status and influencer status to be able to kind of help pump up different things? Like, no, usually it's because they're using it and they believe in a product. And I can say, like, this has happened to me a good amount, where I'll give you a good example. Like, I've been using Goldcast for honestly like 2 years now, 2.5 years. And like, I've told at least 30 to 40 people about the platform. And I know there's been at least 8 to 10 people that have bought specifically on the recommendations that I gave in my experience. Now, I feel like that, again, it's one person that has, a decent sized audience that talks about certain things, and like, they believe it. It's like you're a subject matter expert in a certain area, like a niche, and like dark social then tacks on to that. And I feel like both of those, influencer marketing and dark social, are going to be huge in 2023. And you're going to start to see more and more companies, one, add it as a line item, but two, you're going to start to see more and more companies like double down into like that whole content creation and like having the people inside empower them to do these things.
I actually couldn't agree more. I actually think dark social is helping the rise of influencer marketing in B2B. And hear me out on this. Dark social, the difference between social and dark social was built by the people throwing it. So they were able to build in attribution. They were able to build in advertising, build in other things. Dark social today is typically built on third-party tools. Like communities are not really building it themselves outside of maybe an LMS, right? And pardon me, little dog in the background. But the rise of community, let's say 2 years ago, right at the start of Rep Genius. I mean, it was around before, but the rise of it becoming rampant. We saw the influencers of today like hanging out and putting their time there much more than they are today, to be honest. So they've leveraged that to create their Patreons, to create their Gumroads, to create their solopreneur businesses. And now to get their time, either have them speak somewhere or pay them, versus like to get their hangout time outside of something like this is becoming much, much, much harder. So I think that's why companies are putting line items. And that's why I do think dark social is in B2B, the rise of influencer marketing, as weird as that is to sound, because in B2C, dark social really isn't a thing. Do you see that? Is that just crazy?
I'll play a little bit.
As just as watching his influencer marketing budget get bigger, undoubtedly, right?
Well, I have budgets for all three things of what I do, but and right now in this economy, I'm watching them all get smaller. But I see both of them, and they both influence one another, right? So if you go back and you look at a study from a couple of years ago that was from GWI and Reddit, it was a joint study. They were looking at the trends of private communities and and everything that you can attach that, but mainly Slack, right? Because that's probably that's the main platform. But the report stated, among a bunch of other stats, that 61% of respondents said that they wanted to be part of these private communities because they wanted to be with people that essentially looked like them, right? If you're in marketing ops, you want to be in a marketing ops private community. If you're in sales, you want to be in something like Rev Genius, right? And so on and so forth. I think that I agree that that's where people start to form, some people start to form their levels of influence and show off their levels of influence, right? Build that audience and what have you. I think for the mega influencers, and this is stuff that we'll go into in future Marketing Mondays, but you have these different categories of influencers, right? I think at the lower levels of the nanos and the micro influencers, that is where you start to see this be built in a lot of these dark communities. However, I think that, and this is kind of key, and I think this is key for companies too, that as a whole, is that it was always built on relationship, right? Like Nick and I have worked together as kind of a company and an influence relationship, and that became a friendship that we work with, right? And I support him, he supports me personally and as companies. Jared and I became friends, and Demand-Based and Rev Genius have a partnership now in some of the things that we do, but that was a year plus in the making of a friendship that was built, right? And so I think that that's where it started. That's where the influencer stuff started. That started in these dark communities, and brands that don't understand that aren't going to be successful with it. Brands that understand that it's built on these personal relationships will be successful in both.
I love it. And Justin, you've been around in this for longer than most. I was just looking at the two back-to-back top 50, top 20 folks in the space. Thank you for sending me this, by the way. But we have an awesome question from Stacy, who's watching. You know, what are some good tools to track multi-touch attribution, to report on dark social, other than Google Analytics, self-attribution, HubSpot, etc.? And Stacy, fractional CMO, she's working with Rocket Reach and some other awesome brands in our space right now. This is you know, the person asking, it's like really serious about this. This is big. Nick, what do you think? What do you do?
Yeah, no, I mean, I self-reported attribution is a big piece that we do. And I think, like, you know, obviously Chris Walker and the whole team at Refine Labs, like, this is something that they've talked about for a while. And I think it's breaking it up into like two buckets. It's like, you know, you have your create demand, which is like where like the dark social happens. It's like the events, social, organic social, community, all that stuff. Then you're capturing that demand, which is like the paid search, retargeting, direct mail, all that stuff. And so the attribution is clear on that, but the dark social happens within like that creation of demand. And then same when you get to the sales and marketing pipeline. Again, it's clear from there. The murky piece is like when you're creating that demand and like the storytelling aspect of it. That's the hardest piece to measure, which is probably why most companies don't do this. Like, you know, it's funny because if you run an attribution software, nothing against vendors that are attribution companies. So, but like, if someone says, you know, in a self-reported attribution, they put, I listened to Nick's podcast. I went and saw him on this Rev Genius and Demand-Based event. I then went to go see a self-guided tour that he put together. Then I submitted an inbound request. What attribution software is going to pick that up? None of them. And so I think that as best as you can, one, the self-reported attribution, but two, then talk to people, talk to the prospects, talk to your customers. How are they hearing about you? How are they advocating for your brand on top of that?
Justin, what do you use or do?
Well, that's the hard part, right? To Nick's point, because where you don't have self-reported attribution, right? You know, like I mentioned that thread that became a meeting. That's probably happened multiple times. I just don't know about it, right? Because I just have a relationship with this AE who sent me a message and said, hey, listen, you know, we were just told, and it was a thread that we were both in on within our Slack, our company Slack. And so I'm sure it happened many more times. The problem is with most of these communities, they're on Slack. Therefore, they're within the administrators, right? Private Slack organization. So me as a brand can't come into Rev Genius, probably this is very good for Jared and for the members, but I'm saying from the company's perspective, I can't come in and run analytics, right? I can't come in and but that is from a brand's perspective, that is what a brand ideally would want to be able to do. Just like from a webinar, they get the leads and you can track those 100%. So I can say, I did a partnership with this company. We got X number of leads from this webinar. Our ROI, you know, we closed this much business. Our ROI was that. That is very hard because, if not impossible, because the tools don't exist. Maybe they won't exist, but I know Jared and I, you know, Jared, you and I have talked about some of this before.
Yeah.
I do think it is a huge space or opportunity, I should say, for someone to crush that as a company. There's something in there. I don't know how you get into it. I don't know how you get around it, but there are a lot of brands that would probably pay for the service if that nut was tracked.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about Charla, which was like, I guess, the closest thing. I'm sure that's on all of your radars, right? Like where a brand could come in. Here's the challenge from a community standpoint, and I don't know that we're gonna answer this question spot on clearly, but like this is good to talk about nonetheless. The challenge is we have 10 sponsors. We give them all access to Charla. We're optimizing for keeping the sponsors happy, but in doing that, the members are getting they feel like their privacy is going, like they feel like they're not only, that's in some ways that's like LinkedIn, and LinkedIn does do this, right? Like with following hashes and like where you could tag, you're turning kind of into LinkedIn where you could come in and see what's what. And you want to create that safe space, but you know, it might just be something where, and how I've heard other brands do it, they'll go on to posts related to things that they do with communities or do with within dark social on attributable platforms like LinkedIn, like promoting this event on LinkedIn, for instance, and scrape the likes and the comments and look at that as, you know, getting towards the MQLs for this type of event. I mean, that's what it's come down to, I think, right? I see Nick smiling. Maybe you've done something similar.
Yeah,
have you done it?
I
mean, you have to.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to do though, and I think there is like ripe opportunity for a company to come in and like build something like this that doesn't feel like it's encroaching on other people's things. It's like, you know, when you do a roundtable event and you have, say, 10 of your target accounts there, and you say, I'm going to record this because we want to use it for content snippet. Like people are going to be a lot more hesitative to speak their mind if you weren't like if you were to record it versus not record it. So I think it's a fine line that you have to walk, and I don't know if anyone's completely figured it out yet.
So let's break down. Oh, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I agree, right? You don't want to, I mean, listen, I'm part of these communities also because you want it to be a safe space, right? Like I want to be able to have conversations in the communities that I'm part of to not only learn, right, to make me better as a marketer and better and go to market and build relationships, But if I want to mention something, I don't want my employer to find out, right? Not that I'd ever say something that could put me in a bad place, but that is a safe space. So, but then on the, if you flip it to the brand side, I would, as a representing a brand, I wouldn't want to invade that, right? Like I want to do things that I don't want to try to take to get leads that make them feel like their privacy was invaded, right? Like, so if this is going to be a lead gen thing, I want it to be known. I want you to sign up for something that and you check the box that that your information might be shared, right? Because otherwise, great, we could get 100 leads, for example, but 10 of them might stick, and you just ruined your brand rep with 90 of them. So I do think you have to be kind of careful with how you go about this. And I know Nick and I are both admins of our own communities. So you can also, how protective you are of your community. And the one that I run is for CMOs and CROs exclusively. I'm very careful about the folks that have chosen to sign up and be members there, because they represent brands from a senior executive level, right? So I wouldn't want to do anything to invade them or make them feel like they made the wrong choice.
Yeah, but let's be real. There and with 3 community leaders here, this is funny to say, but like there are finesses. And what I mean by finesses, attribution, fine. We'll deal with that another day. But like, you see Demandbase or Alice in Dark Social listed by somebody else, and you have clients there, Justin. You have clients in that same thing. What if they kind of poke the bear and not you? How do you do that?
You said
Leveraging clients within Threads. Like what's better? Company A or Alice? Right, Nick? Like that happens all the time. And you can't respond, and you shouldn't, because trust is the most important thing. And of course you're going to say your brand or wherever you work with is the best. That's obvious. How do you get somebody else to come and do it? And is that potent?
Yeah, well,
I don't know what Nick is. Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
No, I was just going to say, it's interesting because, like, again, being in a lot of communities, like I just think of Slack communities. I'm looking right now and I have 12 of them on my Slack. And then I have Discord communities. And then I'm part of Exit 5 on Facebook. It's the only reason why I use Facebook. But outside of that, like I see people all the time. They'll be like looking at a direct mail vendor. Anyone have any options? And I just sit there and I look, and it's so interesting to like read the conversations, and like you want to jump in, but like I don't. And usually what I'll actually do is I'll actually throw it over to a customer, and they'll actually jump in on my behalf based on their experience. I'm just say, hey, that if you wanted to add to the conversation, you're already in this community, feel free. And that actually goes over well. If someone's just looking for insights into gifting or direct mail, I'll be like, hey, I'll give you hopefully a non-biased viewpoint. I do work for a gifting company, but here's XYZ reasons why I think gifting or direct mail can make an important part of your outbound marketing strategy, for example.
And I agree. And I had mentioned, a little while ago, we have a program set up with our customer marketing team that's exactly what Nick said, right? If we see some conversations happening in a thread about the various parts of our products that would mean something, right? Intent data, ABM, ABX, so on and so forth, we will go ask a customer if they feel comfortable responding And if they do, great. If they don't, that's okay. But, we'll go ask our customers because that's the best. We also, and I will also do what Nick will do, and I think that's from more of a thought leadership perspective. You identify yourself as being part of the organization you're part of, and you provide the thought leadership at the upper level, the industry level. I've also gone and asked my CMO to reply in certain communities that he's also active in, because he can provide a thought leadership perspective, being in this industry for as long as he can remember. And a lot of people follow him as well. So, I kind of balance a few different strategies depending on the type of question it is.
So we have some awesome questions, and I'm looking in the Q&A from Sarah, who's a VP of marketing. We're like, Nick is responding to her, which is friggin' awesome. Like we're dark. Like this is unattributable right here. Like, it's so funny. In the beginning of Rev Genius, one of the tactics or strategies that I never say that we did, but we did, was I'd go to every single webinar, and in the comments, I would talk and like tell people to join Rev Genius, like no matter what, like webinars for the ICP. It was like the biggest hack. Imagine that, Justin, showing up to like a different ABM, not even like your competition, but like where your persona is, and just be like, oh, CMOs, come join our community. But like Jane is going, where to get started. How would you encourage employees to join? And then as a follow-up that I know Nick is answering here is how best to train them, because there's a couple types of trainings. One, they want to do well in these social networks or whatever and get following, but also they need to know how to say the right things, right? Nick, how would you respond to both? Like, how do you get your team at Atlas started?
So I think it's figuring out which communities fit, the persona or department that you're in. For example, am I in Rev Genius? Absolutely. As a marketer, I am also in Peak Community, which is geared strictly towards marketers. And then I have my own community, which is Revenue Era, with Arthur Castillo from Chili Piper and Joel from Lattice. And then we have the M2 community, which again is for marketers, but it's put on by Alice, Mutiny, and Chili Piper as well. So there's probably honestly so many communities that are out there. So it's figuring out where you can make the biggest impact from a learning perspective and professional development perspective, and then just kind of test and iterate on it. Like, for example, I'm in a lot of these communities. Do I talk in a lot of these communities? No, I consume and I try to, mute 98% of the channels. But if there's something that I feel like I can add value to, I will jump in and add value. And I think if you're a salesperson, if you're a RevOps person, if you're a CS person, like, I think it's important to figure out what communities are first out there. You can make a short list or whatever, stack rank them. Again, maybe use Dark Social to talk to your peers and be like, hey, what are the 3 communities you're a part of and why? And then you just stack rank them, and then you're just testing them out. Some of them are costs to get into. Some of them are free, like Rev Genius. And I think it's really just figuring out what works for your bandwidth and in your schedule. Like I said, for me, there's so many communities out there and that I'm a part of that I just can't, from a bandwidth perspective, be engaged in all of them. But when there's interesting stuff that pops up, I do talk, and then it's a lot of the one-on-one engaging. Like I DM a lot of people. People DM me all the time. And again, Dark Social coming into play, they're asking about different tools, different thoughts around marketing strategy, different thoughts around employee advocacy, which I'm also very active in. And I think those all play together. And then the enablement piece, I think it's just understanding that, like, hey, you're not in these communities to sell people. No one's going to Rev Genius to be like, I'm going to buy demand-based tomorrow because you told me to. They're going to use it as a means to learn more. They're going to probably talk to another couple of their peers. But again, if there's 3 or 4 people that say, I use demand base. Here's why. More than likely, you're going to go take a demo with demand base, and you're probably going to buy them based on what your peers said from these communities. And I think that's important to know as well.
Well, and I think to your point, Nick, we originally, right, would go and search Google, and plenty of people still do, obviously, but we'd go search Google for our answers. And now we go and search in these communities for our answers because they're with our trusted peers or people that we trust, right? Again, you'd go within Rev Genius if you want to get the opinions of either other folks within sales, be they AEs, SDRs, or what have you, or if you're just looking to embed yourself in a community like that and start to build up that relationship. But you are seeing that shift, right? Something because it went as answered now, because I provided a thought and you mentioned it before, Nick, that I want to make sure we touch on is Jane asked, what we think of Discord, and does anybody do it right? Is it all kind of crypto people? And what I said was that I think it's a great platform. It has some unique features that Slack doesn't yet, which is pretty cool. From my opinion, unfortunately, the vast majority are crypto and NFT servers right now, though it really started with creative folks, a lot of creative servers initially, but I do think that there's a wide open space for communities that are around niche topics when it comes to, say, B2B marketing. Whether that is at an upper level of B2B marketing or B2C for that matter, or it's smaller into direct mail or go to market or sales or things of that nature.
I absolutely love Discord. Go on.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think another underrated thing, and maybe even undervalued aspect of the whole dark social within communities is recruiting and hiring. Like, I can't tell you how many times that, like, I'll post a job opening or something within some of these communities, and I'll drive like 20 to 30 applications from people for specific roles, especially if they're a marketing role. And I think, leveraging, like we talk about dark social as far as, driving revenue, but what about dark social in terms of hiring qualified, amazing people? Like, that's another whole aspect of this that I think is incredibly important to touch on.
Yeah, I mean, we use a platform called Palette, which is geared towards helping communities leverage just this thing. Their core focus is communities to build a business model on this because it is so potent. Last week, I got 2 people jobs. It all happened via text message, which happens often. And the 2 companies I met in our community, and the people I met on LinkedIn and in our community, it's extremely potent, for sure. What I was going to say about Discord is, Discord is from a platform standpoint, it's probably the best platform out there. Although people in B2B don't use it, so they're going to be scared of it, and it's not gonna pick up. Like, that's just what it is. Discord will blow away Slack from a free functionality, like every day of the week, from integrating with your systems every day in the week. And I want to make that clear. But it won't win from an engagement perspective in a B2B SaaS community because it's not there yet. And the reason why crypto communities are big there, art communities are there, and culture communities are big there in general. It's a very Gen Z-ish platform. And if from a discovery standpoint, if that's your audience and that's who you're selling to, like you're a B2B e-commerce technology company or you're an e-commerce store, and you want to run like a Hypebeast Discord or something like that for streetwear culture and all that, you will be significantly more successful there. than Slack from a platform standpoint. But bringing out other, it's funny. Like Justin, you put notes here with Reddit. Is Reddit dark social? Is it because there's no identification of the person that this web-based, app-based platform could skim and be considered dark social? It's kind of a unique one, right?
I think it is. I mean, you can obviously that'll pull into GA a little clearer simply because it'll show up as being Reddit if there's a link that drives. But I believe it's an untapped place, right? Like when we first started to really look at conversations that were happening, of course you can pull it into certain listening tools that exist for social, but that allow it. But there's a lot of conversations that happen on Reddit that if you don't monitor and you don't check for, and if you aren't a community member there, they just aren't. It's not going to be beneficial for you. And I think a lot of people forget about Reddit, and it's still a viable community. And I see often, I'm engaged there, and people will ask questions, and something really easy that I do quite frequently is people will ask, and this has happened in Rev Genius before and other communities I'm part of. People, will talk about wanting to level up, that whether it's that they're out of work or they're just interested in them or their teams leveling up. And we have, certification programs that are, $350 per. We have 3 of them, and they don't talk about, they're not demand-based at all. They are thought leadership programs, certifications about ABM, ABX. And I'll provide those codes, right? They're not trying to sell demand-based, nothing. It's here's some codes, hope your team levels up and does what, you get an extra cert on your resume, essentially. We see that. I see that all the time in Reddit. I see people asking for certifications, or they're just asking for different software, questions about integration with software, right? Like I've had people ask me, does demand-based integrate with HubSpot, or trying to figure out some integration with Salesforce, like some problematic integration. Nick knows I've sent, not necessarily with Reddit, I've sent him plenty of links to, people asking about multiple gifting platforms before, and I shoot him the link. I'm like, hey, you or someone on the team might want to jump in and give your opinion on this, or have someone jump, give their opinion. But yeah, I do think that Reddit is a viable platform. Maybe not as clean as when you talk about dark social as a Slack-based or Discord-based, or one that we haven't talked about and goes down another platform is Telegram, right? But
spam bots galore. I had to delete it from my phone. I actually was in crypto, and that I thought I was going to get like arrested because of all the weirdness that was coming in spam wise.
One thing I just to follow up on, what Jane was saying in chat, is that part of why this works, currently, or why there's the heavy slant to Slack is, almost all B2B companies use Slack. So if you're in there all day long for work, it makes a lot of sense. There are communities that I'm part of that are web-based platforms that I don't go to nearly as often. Is that good or bad for bandwidth? You can make that decision, but Slack, it's a lot easier for me to click the little box next to my work one and go engage.
Spot on. Now, let's get to the point here. We're talking all about, generating business. What's the impact of revenue actually on this? Nick, you're outspoken on this. You have all the stats probably in a nice little file on your desktop there. I want to hear from you.
Yeah, it's going to help me get my next job, right? Yeah, it's no one can refute when you're driving $1 million in pipeline yourself through dark social. But yeah, no, I mean, it's something where I've been, using self-reported attribution. Like I know for a fact that I drove 500K in pipeline last year, 250K of that closed. I'll do $1 million this year. The goal is, I mean, honestly, I'm shooting a little low and saying 50%. So 500K closing, probably be a little bit higher than that, to be honest with you. But I am on track to hit that $1 million in pipeline just through organic content creation, the dark social within communities, all of that aspects playing together. Not only the revenue aspect and the pipeline aspect, but the amount of people that I've been able to get into the company is like hired into new roles, things like that. So yeah, I mean, it is something I'm super passionate about because again, through the content that you're creating and the brand that you're building for yourself and the audience and all that stuff, it's like, yeah, you work for a company and you're evangelizing on behalf of that company. However, you're playing the long game and you're understanding that like, hey, you could do this for 3 or 4 other brands. And so it's interesting to think about it that way. And like, as dark social and influencer marketing becomes more, as in like an everyday thing, kind of like ABM was, like it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next year.
And then as a quick follow-up, and I'll ask Justin this as well from C again, what percentage of demand gen versus lead capture are you running?
So I would say, so we don't do any lead. We don't really do any lead capture. It's all creating demand and capturing demand is really the two things that we focus on. So it's like the communities that we're a part of, the sponsorships or partnerships that we do. It's the organic social creation of content. And then you've got like paid search, SEO, all that stuff. Those two alone, like we just try to run that model, create, capture demand, and then how does it spin into, say, like ABM or targeted marketing? And you have to obviously have a strong POV and messaging and narrative to support the other two.
Justin, 2-part question. One, talk about revenue, and then talk about lead versus demand.
Well, I mean, I would agree with Nick on, hopefully since we grew up as an ABM company, we focus on capture. Everything that we do is around that, right? Whether it's through our sponsorships, our partnerships, the events we run. We certainly, we're fortunate enough to have a podcast that generates revenue. They're there for pipeline generation. And, we have a whole team of 5 or 6 people, something like that are part of our podcast team. And their goal and what they do is find thought leaders to interview, and they become prospects and turn into pipeline. Mm-hmm. With the when it comes to dark social, we're still working on implementing what our measurement processes will be, right? So we have all the platforms, we have employees that are involved with it. This year, we put me at the head of it to run it, because prior to that, no one within the company had direct responsibility for it, and we're still trying to work on building up other people's personal brands. We know that, right? We're very consciously working on training others and encouraging others. Luckily, we have the support of our CMO, who has come straight out and told people they should develop their personal brands. But in what Nick was saying about self-attributed reporting is, we do need to crack that nut a little bit, because that you're having the impact from a personal level, but people aren't putting it in necessarily as well as Nick, the people that work kind of are influenced by Nick are doing.
How could everybody here get in touch with both of you? Justin's going to be back next week and every week, by the way. I just want to be conscious of time here. Nick, how could we keep picking your brain in dark social?
Yeah, honestly, find me on LinkedIn. That's definitely the best spot for sure. Shoot me a DM. Happy to talk and talk more about it.
Justin?
Same thing. Anywhere's Justin Levy on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram.
And Jane, I'm going to get back to you on your question. So Jane asked a question about should brands build community and all of that. Well, we're going to have the community track, Justin, where that's going to be very appropriate to go into. That is much more than a 5-minute answer. And that's going to be one of the prime questions that we ask, I promise, at least in the next one. And we have some awesome guests coming. This is the first episode of Marketing Mondays. Next one will be here too. Justin mentioned come to Rev Genius for sales. That's true. Come to us for marketing, thought, leadership as well, and just really revenue driving, right? Because we're one aligned engine. When we're all doing it, salespeople building personal brands and being dark social, demand gen overseeing sales, RevOps figuring out this whole thing together, the revenue arc goes up and to the right. Thank you all for coming.